Hi, let's begin our final topic, the Skeptic's Guide to Complementary and Alternative Medicine. But before we begin, I think it's important for me to self-disclose my history with complementary and alternative medicine. I am a level 2 Reiki practitioner. I have been attuned to the healing forces of the universe, and I'm supposed to be able to channel that healing energy through my fingertips. I've been to a chiropractor. I've been to acupuncturists. I took my kids for cupping because I thought it might treat their asthma because that's what I was told acupuncture can do. It didn't. I have taken homeopathic remedies. I've taken Chinese herbs. Nasty. I've been to an astrologer, and my husband, who is an astronomer, well, let's just say it took me 15 years of being confident in my marriage before I was able to tell my husband I had his chart done with. That's why I was asking him exactly what time of day he was born. I've taken Ayurvedic remedies. My dosha is Vata Pitta. And I am a board-certified hypnotherapist. Of all of these different practices, I would say that the only one I would ever suggest somebody do would be hypnotherapy, and it's not because I think it will cure your smoking or it will help you lose weight, but because I think it can help with relaxation. I've told some of my classes, but not all of them, but I have a condition called tinnitus. It's a chronic ringing in the ears. It can really be annoying. It made me very sick when I was first diagnosed. My medical practitioners told me I had to live with it. I did not want to live with it. Nobody wants to live with something that makes them feel unwell on a daily basis. I went to alternative practices because the thing about alternative practitioners and alternative practices is that there's always one that's going to help you. If you have a look at this slide and you see all of these practices that I've used, why do you think I used all of them? Why do you think I've taken herbs and gone to acupuncturists and gone to chiropractors for tinnitus? The correct answer is because none of them worked. There's no such thing as alternative medicine. There's only medicine that has been proven to work and medicine that hasn't. Once something has been shown to work, it's called medicine, and it is no longer considered alternative. Dr. Robert Bosell, who wrote the book Snake Oil Science, used to work for the National Institute of Complementary and Alternative Medicine. He ran research within that branch of the National Institutes of Health. He left the NIH and wrote this book. Let me summarize his conclusions with respect to complementary and alternative medicine that I abbreviate as CAM. He said there is no compelling, credible scientific evidence to suggest that any CAM therapy benefits any medical condition, reduces any medical symptom, pain or otherwise, better than placebo. He does say these methods work, but not for the reasons you think they may work. I'm going to go over some of the lessons I've learned from Dr. Harriet Hall, who also goes by the name the Skeptic. Dr. Hall has recorded a number of videos for the James Randi Education Foundation. I'll be asking you to watch one or two of those as part of your final. She covers the science-based perspective of complementary and alternative practices. I will ask you to compare what she says to some of the videos that I will post for those specific practices. I've gotten a lot of information for what I cover in this topic from her videos. So some of it may be repetition, but I think that's perfectly fine. And some of the lessons that I've learned from Dr. Hall and I want you to learn are the following. Roosters don't make the sun come up. Never believe one study. And find out who disagrees with you and why. Let's have a look at some of these lessons. The first one is roosters don't make the sun come up. So what does that mean? You know what that means. But what you don't know is that there's a Latin name for this. It's called a post hoc ergo propter hoc logical fallacy. Post hoc ergo propter hoc means after this, therefore because of this. To be honest, I think it's Latin for correlation doesn't prove causation, but we'll go with what Dr. Hall said. The rooster crowed and the sun came up. Therefore, the rooster made the sun come up. That's a post hoc ergo propter hoc logical fallacy. And we know that that's silly. We understand that. But let's look at this. I took X. X could be a pill, a homeopathic remedy, a chiropractic adjustment, or an acupuncture treatment. I took X. I got better. Therefore, X made me better. Is there any difference between this and believing that roosters make the sun come up? Let's look at the natural course of a disease. This is taken from Dr. Bozel's book. He writes about the hypothetical nature of his Aunt Sarah's arthritis pain. At the beginning of the month, she's not in very much pain, but as the month continues, starting around day 7, her pain starts to get worse and worse and worse till it hits a peak around day 16, and then it starts to get better. He writes in his book how his aunt would call him every few months and say, I found something new to treat my arthritis. And she would use that remedy and she would swear that it worked. And then a couple months later, she would call him with another remedy that she found for her arthritis. Why is it important to understand the natural course of disease and what's going on with Aunt Sarah's arthritis pain? Almost any disease has a fluctuating course. Symptoms wax and wane. They get worse, they get better. They get worse, they get better. And this is an example of Aunt Sarah's pain. At the beginning of the month, she has hardly any pain. Then it gets worse, then it subsides. This is what happens with no treatment at all. Let's say she decides to take a pill for her pain, or an acupuncture treatment, or a chiropractic adjustment. She might not try it during the first few days of the month when she hardly has any pain. She's more likely to take it once the pain has peaked. Look what happens. Her pain goes away. Of course, this is exactly what happened in the previous graph with the left half cut off. But it sure is convincing. It sure looks like when she took her remedy, when she took her treatment, it worked. This is the natural course or the natural history effect of her illness before she took her treatment. This is afterwards, the placebo effect. What we want to learn from this is if you want to prove a new treatment works, you have to show that it produces more improvement than the natural course of the disease and the placebo response. It has to work better than both of those. For Aunt Sarah, she certainly was feeling better, but it wasn't due to any treatment that she had taken. She was experiencing what is called regression towards the mean. And I ask you to watch a video in a few minutes that will explain this in really good detail. But it worked for me. So let's take an example. I had toenail fungus and I took vitamin E oil and the fungus went away. This is a post hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy. It's an anecdote. It hasn't shown correlation, much less causation. What are some possible explanations for it worked for me? Maybe vitamin E does cure foot fungus. Maybe the foot fungus spontaneously resolved. Maybe there were some other factors involved. And maybe it wasn't even a foot fungus in the first place. All we know is the condition improved after the treatment, but we can't be sure the improvement was because of the treatment. Please stop and look at the video that I have posted. Lesson number 2, never believe one study. We've all seen science change its mind. Early positive studies are often followed by better but negative studies. The typical progression would be X works really well. But then as we take this product or this treatment and we start applying it to larger and larger populations of people in a less controlled situation, we find out that maybe X doesn't work quite so well. We start to find out that X works, but it has side effects that we didn't see when it was in a small, controlled situation, but rather side effects that started showing up when we were in a larger, uncontrolled situation. And we ultimately may find out that X doesn't work at all. Hard science is easy. Soft science is hard. Okay, so I'm not saying that you all should be taking physics courses, but let me explain what I mean by hard science. In hard science, chemical A plus chemical B is always going to yield chemical C. It's always the same, it's always quantifiable, it's reproducible, we know what the results are going to be. But once we add that human factor, once we start doing medical studies, well, that's when the problems start. And that's what I refer to as soft science. I'm not talking about following a recipe or a chemical formula, which, now that I think about it, maybe that's what recipes are. But anyway, I'm talking about human studies. There can be genetic differences. There could be confounders like age, diet, alcohol use. There may be diseases that are occurring in the people at the same time we're studying something else. Subjects may not take all their pills. It's hard to control everything in a situation when you start using human beings. So A plus B may equal C, or it may equal D, or it may equal E. And that's what I mean by hard science is easy. So what can go wrong with research? Lots can go wrong with research. It can be the people doing the research might be influenced by those paying the bills. They want to keep working. They want to do their research. The researchers could be biased. I'm not sure how often this is happening, but in drug trials, what we often would see are the positive studies that were being published, and people might be taking medication without knowing all the studies that were done on this particular medication. People are working to make sure that all studies are published so that everybody can have the information they need before making a decision. The data doesn't justify the conclusion. Too many subjects dropped out. This is why we've talked about this throughout the semester, why we've looked at current events and research, because you want to be able to know all of these different factors before you make a decision about something that can affect your health. And science isn't perfect. Drugs have side effects. People distrust the establishment. We're seeing this now in an unfortunate manner. People may perceive the scientific method as artificial, as unnatural, and they don't actually understand the scientific method, the importance of starting with a hypothesis and working your way through, or even following the gauntlet of research that we looked at the beginning of this semester, why it takes so long for something to go to market. There's also an anti-intellectual attitude in America right now. Even though we need science and we need experts, not everybody's paying attention to the experts. Modern science is also impersonal. People feel ignored when you have an appointment and it's only 15 minutes and 14 out of those 15 minutes is spent by your provider looking at their computer screen. This is what makes alternative practices so appealing. Medical science is flawed, but I have to tell you, it is better than the alternative. The alternatives are based on testimonials, personal experiences, anecdotes, belief-based treatments, untested treatments. This cartoon is supposed to be funny. There was this one crazy time my dad got bit by a snake. No, you fool. I said I needed an antidote. And all the guys giving him, yep, you're right, an anecdote. Just because there are flaws in the airplane design doesn't mean flying carpets work. Let's fix the airplane design. How many of you have parents who've told you that cell phones cause brain cancer? This study was published using data from pooled case-controlled studies over a long period of time. It showed that those who used cell phones for 25 or more years were 200% more likely to develop brain gliomas. 200%. That's enormous. But you know, and I know, that they were talking about relative risk. If your everyday risk of developing a glioma is 3 out of 100,000, a 200% increase brings that to 9 out of 100,000. Yes, from a statistical standpoint, that is a 200% increase. That may be statistically significant, but is it clinically relevant? Does it mean that you're going to stop using your cell phone? Here's another study that came out saying, here's another study that was published in 2018. It even made it to the National Toxicology Program paper on the U.S. Health and Human Services about cell phones. It had to do with animals. It was an animal research study that showed that 2 types of tumors in male rats exposed to the same type of radio frequencies that were found from cell phones developed brain tumors. The thing is, what you didn't see unless you looked at the source document was that the tumors only occurred in the male rats, and there was no association between this exposure to cell phone radiation in female rats, male or female mice. And let me just give you a brief explanation about why radiation from cell phones cannot cause cancer. The type of energy that can penetrate into the cell and cause damage is called ionizing radiation. This is ultraviolet radiation from the sun, X-rays, gamma ray radiation. This ionizing radiation end of the spectrum penetrates into the cell, into the nucleus of the cell, damages the DNA, resulting in the formation of proteins that lead to tumor development. The non-ionizing end of the spectrum, the longer wave radiation, includes radio and cell phones. This is not the type of radiation that can penetrate the cell, get into your cell nuclei, and cause cancer. Yes, they put off heat, but they don't put off the kind of heat that is going to cause cancer.